Barkerville is situated on the western edge of the Cariboo Mountains in British Columbia. It was named after Billy Barker from Cambridgeshire, England, who was among those who first struck gold at the location in 1861. His claim was the richest and the most famous. Barkerville was built up almost overnight and was a case of growth via word of mouth. It grew as fast as word of Barker's strike spread. His claim would eventually yield over 2,000 pounds of gold. Before the construction of the Cariboo Wagon Road, people hauled their own supplies to Barkerville, either on their backs or in a pack train. Because supplies were scarce, the prices of even the most everyday items were extremely high. High prices for goods in Barkerville did not ease up until the Cariboo Wagon Road had been finished, when goods could be transported by huge freight wagons. Soon, movers of freight boasted that they could pack and carry a set of champagne glasses without any breakage. For a price, of course. More women came to Barkerville after the construction of the Cariboo Wagon Road. Cattle were driven north up the Okanagan Valley via what is now known as Highway 97 to provide meat for the miners and residents of Barkerville. At first, the town consisted only of makeshift cabins and tents. By the mid-1860s, however, Barkerville had a population of approximately 5,000 people. 3,000 of them were Chinese immigrants operated by the Quang Le Company of Victoria. Even though its population was transient and largely dependent on mining, Barkerville was becoming more of a real community. It had several general stores and boarding houses, a drugstore that also sold newspapers and cigars, a barber shop that cut women's as well as men's hair, the Wake Up Jake restaurant and coffee saloon, the Theatre Royal, and the Cariboo Literary Society. Horse racing and prize fighting were common entertainments. Among the so-called sober set, church services were extremely well attended. The general stores were the most profitable of the merchants. As they had the only source of food, the store owners could increase the price of food as well as supplies. In the height of the gold rush, the stores sold flour for as high as $1.25 a pound. Beans, meat, and dried fruit were sold for $1 a pound. But as the gold rush ended, the stores went bankrupt and finally out of business. People of Chinese descent were an important part of Barkerville life for almost 100 years. They established several businesses, including the Quang Le Company, a general store that sold groceries, clothing, hardware, and mining tools. The company had stores in other parts of British Columbia, but the Barkerville store was one of the most impressive. The Chinese community also built cabins for Chinese miners who saved money by sharing 4 or 5 to a cabin, and Tai Ping, otherwise known as the Peace Room, the equivalent of a modern-day nursing home. Chinese benevolent associations provided social services to the Chinese community, as well as resolving any disputes without the use of BC courts. On September 16, 1868, Barkerville was destroyed by a fire that spread quickly through the wooden buildings. Rebuilding began immediately and at an impressive pace. Within 6 weeks, 90 buildings had been rebuilt. Boardwalks were improved and the narrow and winding main street was widened and straightened. By 1880, there were enough children in the area to build the Barkerville School. It had 13 pupils and 1 piece of school equipment, a chalkboard. Even so, Barkerville's population was declining by the end of the 19th century, and it eventually had only a few people as permanent residents. It had a revival in the 1830s when the Great Depression caused widespread unemployment and the price of gold skyrocketed. But as the Depression turned for the better, Barkerville declined to a very small village. In 1957, the government of British Columbia decided that the town should be restored and operated as a tourist attraction. Today, Barkerville appears as it did in its heyday and is referred to as Barkerville Historic Town. The history of each building has been researched and documented. All the people that work there are in period costume. There are no permanent residents. They were either bought out or moved to New Barkerville during the restoration of the site. In 2008, Barkerville's Chi Kung Tong building was designated a National Historic Site of Canada. The 2-story board and batten structure was completed in 1877 and originally used by the Chi Kung Tong Organization, a benevolent association for recent arrivals. It was representative of the community building among immigrant Chinese laborers and merchants in new settlements throughout Canada. Although gold rush towns boomed all over the West in the 1800s, Barkerville is unique, with over 100 heritage structures still standing on the spot that they were built. In addition, there are 2 historic cemeteries and over 200,000 precious objects and photographs in the museum's collection. Barkerville's Chinatown is the largest collection of pre-railway Chinese buildings in North America, and Barkerville has one of the largest Chinese archival collections in Canada with approximately 18,500 items. This level of collection and preservation is unusual and represents both a tremendous opportunity and a big responsibility. It is a testament to the forethought of the British Columbia residents in the 1950s that supported the restoration project. The Barkerville Heritage Trust, the nonprofit charity that manages Barkerville on behalf of the province, is committed to continuing this legacy by ensuring that the highest possible standard of care is given to the buildings and the collection, and that a rigorous level of accuracy is maintained when representing the site to the public. Barkerville does not represent any single moment in time, but rather the ongoing process of community development, from the discovery and growth years in the 1860s through many boom and bust cycles, and finally the transformation into a historic site and tourist attraction from the 1950s to the present.